Human family finds injured Triceratops. Then something incredible happens. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The forest was alive with the sounds of chirping birds, rustling leaves, and the faint hum of insects as the Johnson family trekked deeper into the lush jungle. The family of four, Tom, his wife Emily, and their two children, 10-year-old Lily and 7-year-old Noah, had planned this camping trip for weeks, eager to escape the city's chaos and reconnect with nature. The children, armed with their small backpacks and boundless curiosity, skipped ahead on the narrow trail, their laughter echoing through the dense canopy. "Stay close, kids," Tom called out, his voice firm but kind. He adjusted the straps of his hiking pack and exchanged a smile with Emily, who walked beside him with an air of quiet excitement. "This is amazing," Emily said, brushing a strand of hair from her face as she glanced around at the towering trees. "It feels like we've stepped into another world." Tom nodded, his eyes scanning the path ahead. "Exactly what we needed. No phones, no traffic. Just us and the wild." Lily and Noah, undeterred by the heat and humidity, were already inspecting a cluster of brightly colored mushrooms growing at the base of a tree. "Look, Mom," Lily called out, pointing at the fungi. "It's glowing." Emily crouched down to examine the mushrooms, her brow furrowing in surprise. They did seem to emit a faint bioluminescent glow, their greenish hue casting an eerie light on the forest floor. "That's unusual," she murmured, glancing at Tom. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" Tom shook his head, intrigued but dismissive. "Probably some rare species. The jungle's full of surprises." The family pressed on, the trail winding through the dense undergrowth. As they walked, Noah began to lag behind, his small feet dragging in the soft soil. "Dad, look at this," he suddenly exclaimed, pointing at the ground. Tom turned back, his curiosity piqued. Noah was crouched near a series of large, oddly shaped depressions in the earth. They were circular, about the size of a car tire, and spaced evenly apart, as though something massive had walked through the area. Tom knelt down to inspect them, running his fingers along the edges of the print. "Strange," he muttered. "These aren't bear tracks or anything I recognize. They're too big. And the shape? They look like dinosaur footprints." Noah interrupted, his voice full of excitement. Tom chuckled but didn't respond immediately. He exchanged a glance with Emily, who had also noticed the peculiar markings. The prints led off the trail and into the denser jungle, disappearing into the shadows. "Maybe it's just erosion or some kind of animal we don't know about," Tom said, trying to sound nonchalant, but there was a hint of unease in his voice. "Can we follow them?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Emily hesitated. "I don't know if that's a good idea. We don't want to get lost." "We've got the GPS," Tom said, pulling out the small handheld device from his pocket. "And the trail isn't far. It might be worth checking out, just for a bit." Emily sighed but nodded. "All right, but stay close and no wandering off." The family veered off the main path, following the strange footprints deeper into the jungle. The air grew heavier, the canopy above thickening until only slivers of sunlight broke through, casting dappled patterns on the ground. The sounds of the jungle seemed to grow quieter, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. As they walked, the footprints became fresher, their edges sharper. And then, abruptly, they stopped. The family stepped into a small clearing, and that's when they saw it. Lying in the center of the clearing, partially hidden by ferns, was an enormous creature. Its hulking form was unmistakable, even in the dim light. "A Triceratops," Emily gasped, grabbing Tom's arm. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice trembling. Lily and Noah froze, their eyes wide as saucers. "Is it real?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Triceratops was motionless at first, its massive body heaving faintly as though struggling to breathe. Its scales glistened in the filtered sunlight, and its 3 iconic horns, though chipped and scarred, jutted proudly from its head. But it was the creature's wound that caught Tom's attention. A deep, jagged gash on its side, oozing dark blood and staining the surrounding grass. "It's hurt," Noah said, his voice quivering with both fear and compassion. Tom stepped forward cautiously, holding out a hand to signal the others to stay back. "Easy," he murmured, his voice low and steady. "It's alive, but it's weak." Emily pulled the children closer to her, her heart pounding. "Tom, what are you doing? It could be dangerous." "It's not going to hurt us," Tom said, inching closer. "Look at it. It doesn't have the strength." As he approached, the Triceratops opened one eye, its amber gaze locking onto Tom. For a moment, Tom froze, his breath catching in his throat. The eye was intelligent, filled with pain but also something else, a plea for help. "Tom," Emily said again, her voice firmer this time. "What are you thinking?" "I don't know," he admitted, glancing back at her. "But we can't just leave it like this. It's suffering." Emily hesitated, torn between fear and compassion. She looked down at Lily and Noah, who were watching the scene with a mixture of awe and concern. "Mom," Lily said softly, "we have to help it." Emily sighed, her maternal instincts battling with her sense of reason. "All right," she said finally, "but we need to be careful." Tom nodded and reached into his pack, pulling out a small first aid kit. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. He approached the Triceratops slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. The creature watched him with its one open eye, its body trembling as he knelt beside it. "Hey there," Tom murmured, his voice gentle. "We're going to help you, okay? Just stay still." He examined the wound, wincing at the severity of it. It looked as though the creature had been attacked by something with sharp claws, and the edges of the gash were ragged and inflamed. Tom used a clean cloth to dab at the blood, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. The Triceratops let out a low, rumbling sound, a mix of pain and gratitude. It was enough to bring tears to Emily's eyes. "We're doing what we can," she said softly, moving closer with the children. She handed Tom a bottle of water, which he used to clean the wound as best he could. Lily and Noah crouched nearby, their faces filled with wonder. "It's so big," Noah whispered, reaching out tentatively. "Don't touch it just yet," Emily said quickly, pulling him back. "We don't want to scare it." But the Triceratops didn't seem scared. In fact, as Tom worked to clean its wound, the creature's breathing began to steady. It closed its eyes, its body relaxing slightly as though it understood that these strangers meant no harm. Emily knelt beside Tom, her hands trembling as she helped him bandage the wound. "This is incredible," she whispered. "I mean, how is this even possible? Dinosaurs shouldn't exist." Tom shook his head, his mind racing. "I don't know, but right now that doesn't matter. What matters is saving it." As the family worked together, a bond seemed to form between them and the Triceratops. The creature let out soft, rumbling sounds that almost sounded like gratitude, and the children couldn't help but smile. When they finally stepped back to assess their work, the Triceratops lifted its head slightly, its amber eyes scanning the family. For a moment, it looked as though it might try to stand, but its body was still too weak. "We need to find it food," Emily said, glancing around the clearing. "And water. It's not going to survive like this." Tom nodded, already formulating a plan. "You're right, but we also need to figure out where it came from. And if there are more of them." The family exchanged a glance, the weight of their discovery sinking in. This was no ordinary camping trip. They had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that would change their lives forever. As the jungle began to darken with the approaching evening, the family huddled together, their minds racing with questions and possibilities. The Triceratops let out a low, mournful sound, and Lily reached out, her fingers brushing against its rough, warm scales. "Don't worry," she whispered. "We're going to help you." And as the first stars appeared in the sky, the family silently vowed to do whatever it took to save the creature and uncover the secrets of the jungle that had brought them together. Night fell over the jungle, bringing with it an almost deafening silence. The Johnson family sat huddled around a small campfire they had managed to build near the clearing. The Triceratops rested a short distance away, its massive body illuminated by the flickering flames. The creature's breaths were steady now, the makeshift bandage holding in place despite its slow, labored movements. Lily and Noah sat close to their parents, their wide eyes fixed on the Triceratops. The initial shock of discovering the creature had given way to a mix of fascination and determination. They whispered to each other in hushed tones, their excitement barely contained. "Do you think there are more of them out there?" Noah asked, his voice tinged with awe. "There must be," Lily replied. "If there's one, there's got to be others. Maybe a whole herd." Tom, who was poking at the fire with a stick, glanced up at the kids. "It's possible," he admitted, "but we have to be careful. We don't know what else is out here, and if there are predators, they could be dangerous." Emily nodded, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she gazed at the injured Triceratops. "And we still don't know how it's even possible," she said quietly. "Dinosaurs went extinct millions of years ago. This defies everything we know." Tom leaned back against a tree, his expression thoughtful. "There's more to this jungle than we realized. Those glowing mushrooms, the strange tracks. Maybe this place has been hidden for centuries. Maybe it's some kind of sanctuary." The word hung in the air, and Emily found herself shivering. Not from the cold, but from the weight of what they had stumbled upon. A sanctuary for dinosaurs? It sounded impossible, like something out of a dream. Yet here they were, sitting mere feet away from a creature that shouldn't exist. The Triceratops let out a soft rumble, its head shifting slightly as if sensing their attention. Lily stood up, clutching her flashlight. "I'm going to look for water," she announced. Tom quickly rose to his feet. "Not alone, you're not. I'll come with you." Noah looked up eagerly. "Can I come too?" Emily shook her head firmly. "Noah, you stay here with me. It's too dark, and I don't want both of you wandering off." Noah pouted but didn't argue, settling back down beside the fire. Tom grabbed his own flashlight and led Lily into the jungle, the beam of light cutting through the thick darkness. The sounds of nocturnal creatures filled the air, a symphony of croaks, chirps, and distant rustling that seemed to follow them as they walked. "Stay close," Tom said, his voice low. He scanned the ground for any signs of a stream or pool. "We need to be quick. I don't want to get too far from camp." Lily nodded, her flashlight darting back and forth. She was surprisingly calm, her curiosity outweighing her fear. "Do you think the Triceratops is thirsty?" she asked. "I'd imagine so," Tom replied. "It's probably dehydrated. And if we can find water, it'll have a better chance of recovering." After a few minutes of searching, they heard the faint sound of running water. Following the sound, they soon came across a small stream, its clear waters glinting in the moonlight. Tom crouched down and filled a collapsible bottle from his pack, taking a cautious sip before handing it to Lily. "It's fresh," he said. "Let's fill a few bottles and get back." As they worked, Lily glanced around the stream, her flashlight catching movement in the underbrush. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I think something's watching us." Tom froze, his hand tightening around the bottle. He turned his flashlight toward the bushes, the beam illuminating a pair of glowing eyes. His heart raced as he slowly rose to his feet, positioning himself in front of Lily. The creature stepped forward, and Tom let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It wasn't a predator. It was another dinosaur, smaller than the Triceratops but no less fascinating. It had a long, thin neck and a bird-like beak, its sleek body covered in shimmering scales that seemed to change color in the light. Lily gasped, her fear melting into wonder. "It's so beautiful," she murmured. The dinosaur tilted its head, studying them with an almost curious expression. It didn't appear hostile, but Tom kept a protective arm around Lily just in case. After a moment, the creature turned and disappeared back into the jungle, its movements graceful and almost silent. Tom exhaled slowly. "Let's get back to camp," he said. "We've seen enough for one night." When they returned to the clearing, Emily and Noah were waiting anxiously by the fire. "What took you so long?" Emily asked, her worry evident. "We found water," Tom said, holding up the bottles. "And we weren't alone. We saw another dinosaur, Emily's eyes widened. Another one? Smaller, but definitely a dinosaur, Tom confirmed. It didn't seem dangerous, but we need to stay vigilant. Noah's face lit up. I knew it. There's a whole world out here. Emily shook her head, her unease growing. This is incredible, but it's also dangerous. We don't know what else is out there, or what we're dealing with. Tom nodded, his expression serious. We'll stay close to camp and keep watch. For now, let's focus on helping the Triceratops. The family worked together to bring water to the injured creature. Tom carefully poured some into a shallow dish, placing it near the Triceratops's head. The dinosaur sniffed at the water before lapping it up, its movements slow but deliberate. The sight filled the family with a sense of accomplishment, a small victory in an otherwise overwhelming situation. As the night wore on, the family took turns keeping watch. Tom sat by the fire, his flashlight in hand, while Emily and the kids tried to get some sleep. The jungle around them was alive with activity, but nothing approached their camp. It was as if the Triceratops's presence served as a protective barrier, keeping other creatures at bay. When morning came, the jungle was bathed in golden light, the sounds of birds and insects filling the air once more. The Triceratops seemed stronger, lifting its head and letting out a low, rumbling sound that echoed through the clearing. The family watched in awe as the creature shifted its massive body, attempting to stand. Do you think it can walk? Lily asked, her voice filled with hope. Tom frowned, studying the Triceratops's movements. It's trying, but it's still weak. We need to find food for it. Something it can eat. Emily nodded. It's a herbivore, right? Maybe we can gather some of those ferns or leaves nearby. The family set to work, gathering armfuls of greenery from the surrounding jungle. They placed the leaves near the Triceratops, who began to eat slowly, its movements deliberate but determined. The sight filled them with renewed hope. As they cared for the creature, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were part of something much larger than themselves. The jungle, with its prehistoric inhabitants and hidden mysteries, was a world unto itself, a world that had somehow remained untouched by time. But as they worked, a distant roar echoed through the trees, sending a chill down their spines. The sound was deep and guttural, a reminder that not all of the jungle's inhabitants were as friendly as the Triceratops. Tom stood up, his hand instinctively reaching for the small hunting knife on his belt. We're not alone, he said, his voice steady but firm. Let's stay close and keep our guard up. The family exchanged nervous glances, their earlier excitement tempered by the realization of the dangers that surrounded them. They had come to the jungle seeking adventure, but they had found something far greater and far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. As the day wore on, the family continued to care for the Triceratops, their bond with the creature growing stronger with each passing hour. But the jungle was watching, and the roar that had echoed through the trees was a reminder that their journey was far from over. The roar echoed again, louder this time, reverberating through the dense jungle like a warning. Tom tightened his grip on his knife, scanning the tree-line for any sign of movement. The Triceratops, seemingly sensing the danger, let out a low rumble and shifted uneasily on the ground, its massive horns aimed toward the direction of the sound. Emily moved closer to the kids, her voice calm but firm. Stay behind me, she instructed, placing a protective arm around Lily and Noah. Whatever it is, we'll be okay. Lily clutched her brother's hand, her wide eyes darting nervously around the clearing. Do you think it's another dinosaur? She whispered. Tom nodded grimly. Probably, but we don't know if it's friendly, so we need to stay alert. Minutes passed like hours, the family holding their breath as the jungle fell eerily silent. Even the birds seemed to have stilled, their usual chatter replaced by a tense, watchful stillness. Then, just as Tom was beginning to think the danger had passed, the bushes at the edge of the clearing rustled violently. A massive figure emerged, its silhouette sharp and menacing against the backdrop of dense foliage. It was a carnivorous dinosaur, larger than anything the family had ever seen. Its sharp teeth glinted in the dappled sunlight as it let out a guttural growl, its piercing yellow eyes locking onto the Triceratops. Noah gasped, clinging to Emily's leg. "It's like a T-Rex," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Smaller," Tom corrected, his voice low but tense. "It's an Allosaurus. Still dangerous." The Allosaurus stepped closer, its clawed feet crushing the underbrush with each deliberate movement. The Triceratops, though weakened, raised its head and let out a defiant bellow, its horns lowered in a display of strength. Despite its injury, the herbivore was ready to defend itself and the family. Tom stepped forward, positioning himself between the Allosaurus and his family. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice carrying a mix of authority and desperation. He waved his flashlight, the beam of light cutting through the dim clearing and briefly startling the predator. The Allosaurus paused, tilting its head as it assessed the situation. It let out another low growl, its eyes flicking between the Triceratops and the humans. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate, as if weighing the risks of attacking. Then, without warning, it lunged. The Triceratops, summoning all its remaining strength, rose to its feet with a mighty effort. It let out a deafening roar and charged forward, its horns aimed squarely at the Allosaurus. The ground trembled beneath the force of the impact as the two dinosaurs collided, the sound of their struggle echoing through the jungle. "Run!" Tom shouted, grabbing Emily's arm. "Take the kids and go. I'll cover you." Emily hesitated for a split second, her eyes darting between Tom and the chaotic scene unfolding before them. But she knew he was right. "Come on, kids," she said urgently, pulling Lily and Noah toward the trail. The children protested, their eyes filled with fear and confusion. "What about Dad?" Lily cried, looking back at Tom. "He'll be right behind us," Emily promised, though her heart was pounding with uncertainty. "We need to go now." As Emily and the kids disappeared into the jungle, Tom turned his attention back to the dinosaurs. The Triceratops and the Allosaurus were locked in a fierce battle, their roars shaking the air. Despite its injury, the Triceratops fought with incredible determination, using its horns to fend off the predator's attacks. Tom knew he couldn't do much to help, but he couldn't abandon the creature that had trusted them. He grabbed a burning branch from the fire and waved it toward the Allosaurus, hoping to distract it. "Over here," he shouted, his voice carrying over the din. The Allosaurus hesitated, its attention briefly shifting to Tom. Seizing the opportunity, the Triceratops lunged forward, its horns goring the predator's side. The Allosaurus let out a pained roar and stumbled backward, blood dripping from the fresh wound. The Triceratops bellowed triumphantly, its chest heaving as it stood its ground. The Allosaurus, clearly outmatched, let out one last growl before retreating into the jungle, its massive form disappearing into the shadows. Tom let out a shaky breath, his heart pounding as he dropped the burning branch. He turned to the Triceratops, which was still standing but visibly exhausted. "You did it," he said softly, his voice filled with admiration. "You're incredible." The Triceratops let out a low rumble, its amber eyes meeting Tom's. There was a silent understanding between them, a bond forged in the heat of battle and the shared will to survive. Tom quickly made his way back to the trail, relief flooding through him as he found Emily and the kids waiting a short distance away. Emily ran to him, her face a mix of worry and relief. "Are you okay?" she asked, her hands gripping his shoulders. "I'm fine," Tom assured her, glancing back toward the clearing. The Triceratops scared it off. "Safe for now." Lily and Noah ran to him, their small arms wrapping tightly around his waist. "We were so scared, Dad," Noah said, his voice muffled against Tom's jacket. "I know, buddy," Tom said, his voice gentle. "But it's over now. We're okay." The family regrouped and cautiously made their way back to the clearing. The Triceratops was lying down again, its body trembling with exhaustion. Emily knelt beside it, her hands carefully inspecting its wounds. "It needs rest," she said, her voice steady. "And more water." Tom nodded, already reaching for the bottles in his pack. As they tended to the creature, a sense of awe and gratitude filled the air. They had faced one of the jungle's greatest dangers and come out stronger for it. Over the next few days, The family focused on helping the Triceratops recover. They took turns gathering food and water, always keeping a watchful eye on the jungle around them. The bond between the family and the dinosaur deepened, each moment a testament to the resilience of life and the power of trust. Lily and Noah, despite the dangers they had faced, were filled with wonder. They spent hours sitting near the Triceratops, whispering to it and marveling at its gentle nature. "It's like it knows we're here to help," Lily said one afternoon, stroking the creature's rough hide. "It does," Tom agreed, watching the scene with a smile. "It trusts us, and we owe it everything." As the Triceratops grew stronger, the family began to explore the jungle further, searching for any signs of where it might have come from. Their journey led them to a discovery that would change their lives forever: a hidden valley, untouched by time, where dinosaurs roamed freely. The valley was breathtaking, its lush greenery and crystal-clear streams teeming with life. Herds of Triceratops grazed peacefully alongside other herbivores, their movements graceful and harmonious. It was a world out of a dream, a glimpse into a past that had somehow persisted into the present. The injured Triceratops, sensing the proximity of its herd, let out a powerful call. The sound echoed through the valley, and within moments, several Triceratops emerged from the trees, their eyes fixed on the newcomer. The family watched in awe as the herd approached, surrounding the injured creature with a mixture of caution and relief. "It's like they're welcoming it home," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. The Triceratops let out another call, its body relaxing as it leaned against its herd. The family stood silently, their hearts full as they witnessed the reunion. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered connection, a reminder of the bonds that existed beyond species, beyond time. As the herd began to move deeper into the valley, the injured Triceratops turned back to the family. It let out a soft rumble, its amber eyes filled with gratitude. Lily stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Goodbye," she whispered. "Thank you for trusting us." The Triceratops blinked slowly, a final gesture of trust and affection, before turning to follow its herd. The family stood together, watching until the herd disappeared into the distance. The jungle seemed to hum with life around them, as if acknowledging the incredible journey they had undertaken. As they made their way back to their campsite, the family felt a profound sense of purpose. They had not only survived but had become part of something extraordinary, a connection to a world they had never imagined. And as the sun set over the jungle, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they knew that this was only the beginning of their incredible adventure. The family's discovery of the hidden valley had left them in awe. It was a world so untouched by time, so surreal, that for a moment, they felt as if they had stepped into a living, breathing prehistoric era. But even as they made their way back to their campsite, they couldn't shake the sense of wonder and the responsibility that now rested on their shoulders. They had helped a creature from another time, and they had glimpsed a sanctuary that no human was ever meant to see. That night, as they sat around the campfire, the jungle seemed quieter than usual. The sounds of insects and rustling leaves were still there, but there was a strange calmness in the air, as though the jungle itself was at peace. The family huddled close, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of the fire. "Do you think anyone else knows about this place?" Lily asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Tom shook his head. "I doubt it. If anyone did, it wouldn't have stayed hidden for this long." Emily leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "But what if someone finds out? What if people try to exploit it?" Tom frowned, poking at the fire with a stick. "That's the danger, isn't it? A place like this, it's fragile. If the wrong people found out, it could destroy everything." Lily and Noah exchanged a glance, their young faces filled with concern. "We have to protect it," Noah said firmly. "The dinosaurs, the valley, they deserve to be safe." Emily smiled softly, brushing a hand over Noah's hair. "You're right, sweetheart, but it's not just up to us. The best way to protect this place might be to make sure no one ever knows it exists." Tom nodded, his jaw set. "We'll leave no trace. When we leave, it'll be like we were never here." The family fell into a contemplative silence, the weight of their discovery pressing heavily on them. They knew they were part of something extraordinary, something far bigger than themselves. And while the thought was exhilarating, it was also daunting. The next morning, the family awoke to find the jungle bathed in golden light. The air was cool and fresh, and the sounds of birds echoed through the trees. They packed up their campsite, their movements purposeful and efficient. There was a quiet determination in the air, a shared understanding that they had a mission to complete. "We should go back to the valley," Tom said as he secured his pack. "If we're going to leave, we need to make sure the Triceratops is settled and safe." Emily nodded, glancing at the kids. "Do you think you're up for another trek?" Lily and Noah grinned, their enthusiasm undimmed despite the challenges they had faced. "We're ready," Lily said confidently. The family set off, retracing their steps through the jungle. The journey was easier this time. The path seemed more familiar, the obstacles less daunting. It was as if the jungle itself was guiding them, leading them back to the valley. When they arrived, the sight that greeted them was nothing short of magical. The valley was alive with activity, the dinosaurs moving gracefully through the lush landscape. The family spotted the herd of Triceratops grazing near a shimmering stream, their massive forms blending seamlessly with their surroundings. The injured Triceratops was among them, its movements slower but more confident. It had been accepted back into the herd, its bond with the other dinosaurs evident in the way they moved around it, protective yet unintrusive. The family watched from a distance, their hearts swelling with pride and relief. They had done it. They had helped this incredible creature find its way back to where it belonged. As they stood there, a sudden movement caught Tom's eye. He turned to see a small dinosaur, a young one no bigger than a dog, emerging from the underbrush. Its curious eyes locked onto the family, and it let out a soft chirp, its head tilting to one side. "Look at that," Emily whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "It's just a baby." The children crouched down, their excitement barely contained. "It's so cute," Noah exclaimed, reaching out cautiously. The baby dinosaur stepped closer, its movements hesitant but unafraid. It sniffed at Noah's hand before nuzzling against it, its soft chirps filling the air. Noah beamed, his face lighting up with pure joy. "It likes me," he said, his voice brimming with excitement. Emily and Tom exchanged a smile, their hearts warming at the sight. It was a reminder of the innocence and beauty of this hidden world, a world that had somehow remained untouched by time. As the baby dinosaur moved back into the underbrush, the family turned their attention back to the herd. The Triceratops let out a low rumble, its amber eyes meeting theirs from across the valley. It was a silent farewell, a gesture of gratitude and trust that spoke volumes. Tom placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, his voice steady. "It's time to go." Lily nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Goodbye," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The family began their journey back, the jungle closing in around them as they left the valley behind. The path seemed different now, as though the jungle was shifting, erasing any trace of their presence. It was a humbling experience, a reminder of the fragility and resilience of this hidden world. As they walked, Emily glanced at Tom. "Do you think we'll ever come back?" Tom hesitated, his expression thoughtful. "I don't know. Maybe it's better if we don't. This place, it's not meant for us." Emily nodded, her heart heavy but resolute. "You're right. It belongs to them." The journey back to the edge of the jungle was long and arduous, but the family moved with a sense of purpose. They knew they had been part of something extraordinary, and they were determined to honor it. When they finally emerged from the dense foliage, the sight of their car parked at the trailhead felt almost surreal. The world outside the jungle seemed distant, almost insignificant, compared to what they had just experienced. As they loaded their packs into the car, Noah paused, his small hands clutching his backpack. "Wait," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Emily turned to him, her brow furrowing. "What is it?" Noah unzipped his backpack and pulled out a small object, his eyes wide with surprise. It was an egg, smooth and warm to the touch, its surface glistening faintly in the sunlight. "Where did you get that?" Tom asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and concern. Noah shook his head. I don't know. It was just... In my pack. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she stared at the egg. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, its surface shimmering with an iridescent glow. Do you think it's from the valley? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom nodded slowly, his mind racing. It has to be. But how did it get there? The family exchanged a glance, the weight of the discovery settling over them. It was as if the valley had chosen to leave them with a piece of itself, a reminder of the connection they had forged with its ancient inhabitants. We have to take care of it, Lily said firmly, her voice filled with determination. It's a gift. Emily nodded, her hand resting gently on Noah's shoulder. We will, but we have to be careful. No one can know about this. Tom placed the egg carefully back into Noah's pack, his expression resolute. This stays between us. No one else can know what we've found. As the family drove away from the trailhead, the jungle receding into the distance, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and responsibility. They had discovered a world that defied imagination, a world that had reminded them of the beauty and fragility of life. And as they drove into the horizon, the egg resting safely in Noah's backpack, they knew that their journey was far from over. The jungle had changed them, and its mysteries had left an indelible mark on their hearts. Whatever the future held, they were ready to face it together. Here's the next 1,500 words continuing the story. The car ride back to civilization was silent, but it was not the silence of exhaustion or relief. It was a contemplative, almost reverent silence, each family member lost in their thoughts. The egg sat nestled safely in Noah's backpack, its faint glow occasionally catching the sunlight filtering through the car windows. To the Johnson family, it wasn't just an egg. It was a symbol, a reminder of the incredible journey they had just experienced. As they drove along the winding road that cut through the outskirts of the jungle, Emily turned to Tom, her voice soft but insistent. We need to decide what to do with it. Tom nodded, his hands gripping the steering wheel. We can't tell anyone. If people find out, it could lead to disaster, not just for the egg, but for the valley and the dinosaurs. What if it hatches? Lily asked from the back seat, her voice a mixture of excitement and worry. What if it's a baby dinosaur? Noah, who was clutching his backpack tightly, piped up. We can take care of it. We took care of the Triceratops, didn't we? Emily glanced back at the kids, her maternal instincts battling with the weight of their discovery. This is different, Noah. A baby dinosaur isn't something we can just hide in the backyard. Lily frowned, her brows knitting together in thought. What if we kept it somewhere safe, just until we figure out what to do? Tom sighed, his mind racing. We'll have to figure something out. But for now, we keep it quiet. No one can know. Not friends, not neighbors, not anyone. The kids nodded solemnly, sensing the seriousness of the situation. The egg, while extraordinary, also carried a burden of responsibility they hadn't anticipated. When the family finally arrived home, the familiar sight of their cozy suburban house felt almost surreal. The normalcy of the neighborhood, the neatly trimmed lawns, the distant hum of a lawnmower, stood in stark contrast to the wild, untamed world they had just left behind. Inside, Emily immediately set about unpacking their gear while Tom carried Noah's backpack to the dining room table. He carefully unzipped it and lifted the egg out, placing it gently on a soft towel. The egg seemed to pulse faintly, as though alive with its own energy. Lily and Noah crowded around the table, their eyes wide with wonder. It's beautiful, Lily whispered, reaching out but stopping just short of touching it. Emily joined them, her arms crossed as she studied the egg. What do you think is inside? She asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and concern. A dinosaur, obviously, Noah said with a grin. Maybe another Triceratops. Or something smaller, Lily suggested. It's not a very big egg. Tom leaned against the table, his expression serious. Whatever it is, we need to be prepared. If it hatches, we're gonna have a big problem. Emily nodded, her mind already racing through the logistics. We'll need to keep it warm. And if it does hatch, we'll need to figure out what it eats, how to care for it. Won't it need a bigger space? Lily asked. Like, a place to run around? Tom rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of their situation. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, let's focus on keeping it safe. The family spent the next few hours setting up a makeshift incubator for the egg. They used a large storage bin lined with blankets and placed a heat lamp over it, adjusting the temperature until it felt just right. Noah insisted on decorating the bin with stickers of dinosaurs and stars, declaring that the baby dinosaur needed to feel at home. Over the following days, life for the Johnson family shifted in ways they couldn't have imagined. The egg became the center of their world, its care and monitoring a constant priority. They took turns checking the temperature, making adjustments as needed, and even reading up on birds and reptiles to get a sense of what to expect. Lily kept a journal, documenting every detail about the egg. The faint pulsing glow, the slight changes in color, even the occasional soft tapping sound that seemed to come from within. "It's like it's talking to us," she said one evening, her pen moving quickly across the page. Noah, meanwhile, took it upon himself to create a list of potential names for the baby dinosaur. "What about Spike if it's a boy?" he suggested. "And Daisy if it's a girl?" Emily chuckled, ruffling his hair. "Let's wait until it hatches before we decide." But even as the family grew attached to the egg, they couldn't ignore the questions and concerns that lingered in the back of their minds. What would happen when it hatched? Could they keep it hidden? And what would they do if it needed to return to the valley? One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Tom broached the subject. "We need a plan," he said, his tone serious. "If the egg hatches, we have to be ready." Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Agreed. But how do we prepare for something like this? We don't even know what kind of dinosaur it is." Lily chimed in, her voice hesitant but hopeful. "Maybe it's a herbivore, like the Triceratops. It might not be that hard to take care of." "And what if it's not?" Tom countered gently. "What if it's a carnivore? What if it grows too big for us to handle?" The question hung heavily in the air, the reality of their situation sinking in. Noah looked down at his plate, his usual enthusiasm dampened. "We can't send it away," he said quietly. "It trusted us." Emily reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're not sending it away, sweetie. We just have to think about what's best for it and for us." The conversation ended without a clear resolution, the weight of the unknown pressing down on the family. But despite their worries, they couldn't bring themselves to give up on the egg. It was a part of their lives now, a connection to a world they had only just begun to understand. As the days turned into weeks, the egg began to show signs of hatching. The tapping sounds grew louder, and tiny cracks appeared on its surface, spiderwebbing across the smooth shell. The family gathered around the incubator, their excitement mingled with nervous anticipation. "It's happening," Lily whispered, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Noah leaned closer, his eyes wide. "Do you think it's okay? It's taking a long time." Emily placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Hatching can take hours, sometimes even a day. We just have to be patient." The tapping grew more insistent, and the cracks deepened. Finally, with a soft, almost musical sound, a small piece of shell fell away, revealing a tiny, scaly snout. The family gasped, their eyes glued to the incubator as the baby dinosaur worked its way free. It was a moment of pure magic. The baby dinosaur, no larger than a rabbit, emerged from the shell, its damp scales glistening under the heat lamp. It blinked up at the family with large, curious eyes, its tiny claws gripping the edge of the shell. Lily let out a soft gasp. "It's beautiful." The dinosaur let out a high-pitched chirp, its head tilting as it studied its new surroundings. It was a vibrant green with faint orange stripes along its back, its small horns and crest suggesting it might be a herbivore. But its sharp claws hinted at an agility and strength that would grow with time. Noah reached out tentatively, his hand hovering just above the dinosaur. "Can I?" Emily nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "Go ahead, but be gentle." Noah's fingers brushed against the dinosaur's scales, and the tiny creature chirped again, leaning into his touch. A smile spread across his face, pure and unfiltered. "It likes me," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Tom crouched down beside them, his gaze fixed on the baby dinosaur. "This changes everything," he said softly. "We have a responsibility now, to this little one, and to the valley it came from." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with both love and resolve. "We'll figure it out, together." And as the family gathered around the baby dinosaur, their world forever changed. They knew one thing for certain. Their incredible journey was just beginning. Here's the final 1,500 words to conclude the story. The baby dinosaur, which Noah promptly named Pip for its tiny chirps and the way it had pecked through its shell, quickly became the center of the Johnson family's life. From the moment it hatched, Pip exhibited a curious, playful personality that endeared it to everyone. It was surprisingly agile for such a small creature, waddling around the house on unsteady legs and chirping excitedly whenever one of the family members approached. Lily took it upon herself to document everything about Pip in her journal. Day 1, she wrote in neat handwriting, "Pip hatched at 3:47 p.m. It's green with orange stripes and has tiny horns. It likes to follow us around and chirps a lot. Noah thinks it's hungry." Noah, meanwhile, took charge of feeding Pip. The family quickly discovered that it was indeed a herbivore, happily nibbling on lettuce, spinach, and even the occasional apple slice. Pip's appetite was voracious, and Noah delighted in bringing it snacks, laughing as the little dinosaur gobbled up leaves with surprising speed. Emily and Tom, while just as enchanted by Pip, couldn't ignore the growing reality of their situation. As Pip grew stronger and more mobile, it became increasingly clear that keeping it a secret would be a challenge. The little dinosaur was energetic and curious, often exploring parts of the house it wasn't supposed to, and its chirps sometimes grew loud enough to be heard outside. One afternoon, as Pip darted across the living room chasing a ball that Noah had rolled for it, Emily turned to Tom with a worried expression. "This isn't sustainable," she said quietly. "Pip is growing. It's only a matter of time before someone notices." Tom nodded, his brow furrowed. "I've been thinking about that too. We need to figure out the next step. Pip can't stay here forever." "But where would we take it?" Lily asked, overhearing the conversation. She knelt down to scoop up Pip, who chirped happily in her arms. "We can't just let it go. It wouldn't survive on its own." "We're not going to abandon it," Tom assured her. "But Pip doesn't belong here. Not in this world. It belongs in the valley, with its own kind." The mention of the valley brought a hush over the room. The memory of that hidden sanctuary, with its lush greenery and thriving dinosaur herds, felt almost like a dream. But it was also a reminder of the responsibility they carried. A responsibility not just to Pip, but to the incredible world they had discovered. Emily sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "If we're going to take Pip back to the valley, we need to do it soon. The longer we wait, the harder it'll be to keep this a secret." Noah's face fell. "But what if we never see Pip again?" Lily hugged Pip closer, her own eyes brimming with tears. "It's not fair. Pip trusts us." Tom knelt down beside them, his voice gentle but firm. "I know this is hard, but sometimes doing the right thing means making sacrifices. Pip belongs in the valley with other dinosaurs. That's where it'll be happiest." The kids nodded reluctantly, their love for Pip evident in their tearful expressions. They knew Tom was right, even if their hearts ached at the thought of saying goodbye. Over the next few days, the family prepared for the journey back to the jungle. They packed supplies carefully, ensuring they had everything they would need for the trek. Pip, now slightly larger and more coordinated, seemed to sense that something was happening. It stayed close to the family, chirping softly and nuzzling their hands as if seeking reassurance. The morning of their departure dawned bright and clear. The family loaded their gear, and Pip into the car, their emotions a mixture of anticipation and sadness. As they drove toward the jungle, the familiar landscape of their suburban neighborhood gradually gave way to the untamed beauty of the wilderness. When they reached the trailhead, the family paused to take a deep breath. The jungle loomed ahead, dense and mysterious, its secrets waiting to be rediscovered. Tom adjusted his pack and glanced at the kids. "Ready?" Lily and Noah nodded, their determination evident despite the tears shining in their eyes. Emily gave each of them a reassuring hug before they set off. Pip nestled in a makeshift carrier that Tom had fashioned from his camping gear. The trek through the jungle was both challenging and awe-inspiring. The family retraced their steps, navigating the dense undergrowth and crossing the stream where they had first encountered the baby dinosaur. Along the way, they spotted signs of the valley's prehistoric inhabitants. Large footprints, distant roars, and the occasional glimpse of a dinosaur darting through the trees. Pip, despite being in unfamiliar territory, seemed at ease. It chirped softly, its bright eyes scanning the jungle with curiosity. Noah occasionally reached into the carrier to stroke its head, murmuring words of comfort. "We're almost there, Pip," he whispered. "You're going home." When they finally reached the valley, the sight took their breath away all over again. The lush greenery, the sparkling streams, and the dinosaurs grazing peacefully. It was a world that defied imagination. The family stood at the edge of the valley, taking in the beauty of the scene before them. Pip chirped loudly, wriggling in its carrier. Tom set it down, and the little dinosaur hopped out, its movements quick and eager. It let out a series of chirps, its head turning as if searching for something. Suddenly, a group of dinosaurs emerged from the trees. They were smaller herbivores, similar in size to Pip but slightly older and more developed. They paused, their heads tilting as they observed the newcomer. Pip chirped again, louder this time, and the group responded with soft calls of their own. "It's like they're talking," Lily whispered, her eyes wide. The young dinosaurs approached cautiously, their curiosity evident. Pip darted forward to meet them, its chirps growing more animated. Within moments, it was surrounded, the group accepting it as one of their own. The family watched in awe as Pip and the others began to play, their movements a joyful dance of newfound companionship. Tears streamed down Lily's face as she watched Pip integrate seamlessly into its new environment. "It's happy," she said, her voice trembling. "It's where it's supposed to be." Emily knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You gave it a chance to be free," she said softly. "You did something incredible." Tom placed a hand on Noah's shoulder, his voice steady. "This isn't goodbye. Pip will always be a part of us. And we'll always have this." The family stood together, their hearts full as they watched Pip disappear into the valley, its green and orange stripes blending with the vibrant foliage. The jungle seemed to hum with life around them, as if acknowledging their presence and their gift. As they began their journey back through the jungle, the family felt a profound sense of peace. They had done what was right, even though it had been difficult. And in doing so, they had become part of something extraordinary, a connection to a world that few could ever imagine. When they reached the trailhead, the jungle receding behind them, the family paused to take one last look. The sun was setting, casting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. It was a fitting end to their incredible journey. As they drove home, the weight of the adventure settled over them, not as a burden but as a treasured memory. They knew they couldn't tell anyone about what they had experienced, but that was okay. The valley, the dinosaurs, and Pip would remain their secret, a reminder of the beauty and resilience of life, and the bonds that could form across time and species. And as the first stars appeared in the night sky, the Johnson family felt a quiet, unshakable joy. They had been part of a miracle, and they would carry it with them always.